Welcome, eCom Logistics Nation. Thank you for joining today's episode. We're on a mission to share e-commerce logistics insights, trends, successes, and challenges from the leaders and innovators in our space.
The people are the capabilities, right? The people are the ones that are the creators of the products and the solutions for their clients.
Welcome, eCom Logistics Nation. Nanad and I are excited to welcome Josh Dolan, President of the Consumer Division Americas and Asia Pacific for GXO Logistics. Josh is a senior supply chain operations leader with deep expertise in the global supply chain across different divisions, including retail, technology, and life sciences. He is known for organizational design, technology, capabilities improvements, and leadership development, creating customer-driven supply chains through an agile mindset, working backward from aligned goals to a true change agent and developer of teams. Previous to joining GXO 10 months ago, Josh had logistics leadership roles at Cardinal Health, Amazon, Target, and Dick's Sporting Goods, just to name a few. Josh, absolute pleasure to have you with us today, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Super excited to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Josh, I think with your very interesting background and experiences, would love to start with learning from you your career journey from an on-site manager at UPS Supply Chain to now president of the consumer division at GXO.
Thanks, Dan. It's definitely been a journey. I definitely consider myself a supply chain geek. I love what I do. I love the ability to really enable brand promises and to help businesses not just manage their business, but grow and thrive. To your point, I started off in the industry in the customs brokerage space with Fritz Companies, which was then acquired by UPS, and managed customs brokerage for Reebok, as well as starting their foreign trade zone program, and really evolved throughout my career into different roles around distribution operations, working in a few different distribution centers for Ikea, and then later on Pep Boys Automotive, into then transportation, international logistics, domestic transportation, distribution strategy support, network design, and inventory management. So I've been super fortunate. I've worked with great leaders. I've worked with great teams, and have done some extraordinary things over time that I'm really proud of. But I think that the thing that I'm most proud of is the people that I've worked with and the things that we've been able to do together to drive business. So again, it's definitely been a journey, but a lot of fun along the way for sure.
And you've seen, I know today, Josh, you have the consumer division, right? What does consumer division entail as far as like the portfolio is concerned? Yeah.
Yeah, it runs a broad spectrum, right? So, it covers things from, housewares, if you think about, and furniture, if you think about brands like Ikea, who we support. We run, a facility for them. We were recognized last year as the highest performance distribution operation in Ikea's global network, which is a huge kudos to that team. We support brands in the health and beauty space like L'Oreal. We support some of the smaller consumer electronics businesses. If you think about Shark Ninja and Conair, as well as a lot of apparel and footwear brands. So we do a lot of work with Nike, a lot of work with Adidas, H&M, Abercrombie, and not just in the US, but globally, which is a testament to the capabilities that GXO really has.
Wow. That goes again from a portfolio perspective, that cuts across a lot of stuff. And as far as, the specific operational execution is concerned, that also covers a range, right? Like, so it's not just, it's only, fulfilled to store, or it is not just direct to consumer. It is everything that could fall in between, right? Like, so as an example, you give Ikea as an example. Ikea's got both the store fulfillment as well as you require either to their drop-off locations, or it could be to direct to consumer's home, right?
Yeah, totally true. So in that portfolio, we run the full spectrum of omni-channel support, right? So to your point, there are some instances where we're doing only store delivery, store fulfillment. In some instances, it's direct to consumer, it's e-commerce logistics. But there are a number of sites that take full advantage of an omni-channel environment in the distribution operations that we provide to support all of those channels, whether it's again wholesale, retail, e-com, as well as the reverse logistics functionality for those operations too. And they cover really broad footprints in terms of coverage for the US as well. So again, we have some sites that are really manual, more traditional distribution operations. We have some sites that have, a blend of manual and low tech solutions. And then we've got those sites that have, big goods to person solutions, high automated sortation capabilities and visibility technology within the four walls. So that's what makes the job so fun, quite frankly. Like, so for, growing up in this industry and being a self-professed geek in this space, I love not only the capabilities that we have, but the culture that GXO has as well. So I think a lot of folks post the spin from XPO don't know that GXO has almost 1,000 distribution center operations worldwide. We operate in 27 countries. We have over 135,000 team members across the planet.
That makes a lot of sense.
I can remember, I think it was probably back in 2017-ish time period. I was in a strategic conference room and I was asked by senior leaders of an organization, if there was one 3PL in the market you could acquire tomorrow, who would it be? And everyone went around the room. Nanad was in the room as well. I think there were probably about a dozen of us in there. And I said PFS. I think it was PFS Web at the time, but it was PFS. And want to, obviously, you guys just closed on that acquisition here in the last month or two. So would love to kind of get your perspective on what is the value that you saw in that acquisition and how is that unlocking additional capabilities to support the growth?
The absolute best part about the acquisition of PFS and bringing them into the GXO family has been the people. I mean, like, it's not like, you just go out and you just acquire this business and sort of the business that comes with the business. It's really been about, the capabilities, and the people are the capabilities, right? The people are the ones that are, the creators of the products and the solutions for their clients. From a culture perspective, they are super focused, similar to GXO, on providing the, tailored solutions, high levels of performance, high touch as the businesses are changing. They've a large part of their business is really focused on e-commerce logistics, right? And personalization. There are some other parts of their business that are outside of, sort of the health and beauty, which is a big part of that e-commerce logistics space. But they apply the same sort of mental model to how they support clients, and which again, from a culture perspective, is very consistent with GXO, which is work backwards from the client, truly understand your client, truly understand their business and their customers. And I think it's been a fantastic relationship so far. So, to your point, we recently closed on them, have been working through some of the integration with them and creating some cross-functional awareness of some of the capabilities. There's been a lot of site visits. My leader, one of the things that he says quite frequently, and I think it's very smart, is often when companies are acquiring companies, it's like, what can the big company do that's going to help that small company? And there's tons of value on that from not only a synergy perspective, but from a growth and development perspective. But when you can take a company that's smaller, that's super agile, that's super nimble, also super customer focused, the things that they've done and the lessons that they've learned in the space that they've operated in over time, how can we take those lessons and those learnings and then apply them to the $10 billion business, right? So how can you take what is best practice and capability in a $250 million business and leverage those learnings in the $10 billion business, right? So you can start to scale capabilities faster. And that's been some of the stuff that's been the funnest. I mean, they bring a lot of just ingenuity to the process. Again, they're focused on where the client's going, similar to GXO. So it's been a lot of fun. There's a lot of innovation that's happening behind the scenes right now, which I'm proud of and excited for.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a portfolio perspective, it also brings this nuance that goes a level deeper than just distribution logistics, right? Like, because PFS's value, it goes much deeper into the value chain of both pre-click experiences and post-click experiences that, a merchant or a brand is expecting out of them, right? Like, so it cuts much deeper. So it's definitely I can kind of see the synergies that it brings and a lot of innovation to the table that it brings. and glad the fact that you guys are embracing things of that nature.
It's like bringing together the best of both worlds in some instances, where you've got scope and scale, and now you've got these personalization capabilities and these things that you do to really understand our business for the D2C portion, where there's hyper personalization or customization. So again, I think we're just scratching the surface initially in the first number of months, but keep an eye on it. It's going to be exciting.
That sounds exciting. The other subject that I want to touch on, and you kind of alluded to this earlier on, which was, hey, when it comes to like, we embrace automation, we embrace technology, right? And if you were to ask me in the industry today, what are the 3PLs that actually have the ability to deploy? Because 3PLs have to run their book of business based on a 3-year, 5-year contract, and the type of capital investment that's necessary. In my career journey, I can tell you it will be some basic automation that will go in as a 3PL, right? But talking about massive capital, $30, $40, $50 million of capital investment in a single site to operate goods to person capabilities, large unit sortation type of capabilities, etc. Everything that we hear from this space, you are one of the very few 3PLs that actually embrace that level of automation inside the facility from a book of business standpoint, right? And so you definitely put yourself in a very different league, without a question. And so how do you, look at that side of the universe? How do you the surge of automation, AI adoption from your particular piece of business, why is it that you succeed where a lot don't even, and I wouldn't even say fail, they don't even step into that space, right? Like, so it's like, oh, you require something that's going to process 500,000 units on peak day. That's going to be a massive project, $100 million capital outlay. Most 3PLs are going to be like, I'm not sure if I'm going to partake in this RFP. So already you are in a very limited shortlist. What makes it different? Like strategically, I think I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, so I'll unpack a few different things with that question, right? To just share with you how we think about it, right? So to your point, right? If you're going to go in with a heavily automated solution, it's capital intensive, right? Just common sense, right? And sometimes in terms of CPU, sometimes it's a velocity and speed conversation, and that can drive a lot of sort of the decision making around what the right solution really is. So we look at it predominantly through two lenses, right? We look at it through the lens of what is it we're trying to solve for with the client. So we really try to make sure we firmly understand that, especially if we're later on going to have a conversation about heavy capital deployment and what that means in terms of partnering together to make that happen. Because yes, it's one part for sure, the capital component, and then it's actually bringing everything together when you go to develop that solution. They're super complicated, right? You've got to bring the right partners and players to the table. But the other piece that we look at as well is our people. So we look at it, when we think about ergonomics and things of that nature as well. How do you make sure you're providing the right level of safe work environment, but really understanding what the client is looking for and what they're trying to solve for leads us to developing a tailored solution for that client. Right? We're able to design a solution that is, again, focused on specific things. It may require a big GTP solution. It may require, whether it's an Exotech or a GO or, Geek Plus or, pick your solution, right? But it's not one solution. It's not one tool to build the house, right? It's really making sure we reach back into our level of expertise and design and say, what's the client trying to solve for? And then what do we need to make sure that we're providing in terms of the work environment for our team to make sure that they're healthy, safe, and the quality levels are very high. I think, there's been a lot of, publicizing of some of the work that we've done with Digit, which is a humanoid robot. Again, you think about ergonomics in a site and testing and piloting. That's cutting edge technology that's being deployed and being tested and piloted in sites. And it's another example of where we have solutions for our clients that are going to drive the right levels of service and cost.
Makes a lot of sense. And so there is a lot of technologies that just make sense, right? Which is automation, looking at it from a solution design standpoint. But one of the other observations is our space is more conducive to bringing in new technologies and trying new things. So you spoke about humanoid robots as an example, Digit, right? There is Figure.ai, which is also another solution out in the market right now. Another set of technologies everyone loves to talk about AI and warehousing and GPT and warehousing, right? Where do you see some of these things going? Like if you are in pilot and capabilities, like I want your perspective on piloting technologies, but also having like a fail fast, fail forward strategy to say, hey, does this even make sense in our warehousing environment, right? I want to know like what's Josh's opinion about where is some of this newer tech capabilities kind of going, and what's tech that you are actually excited about?
So I'm excited about a number of different technologies, but without singling out a specific technology that's out there in the market today, we create and have an environment where some of these technologies can sort of figure out, work out the kinks, what are the inefficiencies or how do they actually work relative to expectations from a design perspective. So, so we're really good about assessing where the right, first, what are the problems that we're trying to solve within the network? And in a site that could be mature, it could be a 5-year-old, 10-year-old site, there may be efficiency opportunities. And so one of the things our automation team looks at is, what are the technologies that are out there relative to this problem that we have to solve, right? And then they'll pilot and they'll learn with those technologies to figure out what makes sense, right? And that's like a very pragmatic approach to problem solving, right? And again, they'll try to move things forward to then say, we're then going to scale the solution. But there are other instances where it's just cutting edge technology and we're learning, right? Some of those technologies, it's about learning and then figuring out portability along the way.
And my personal observation is, as I said previously, our industry is usually the first that a lot of new technologies lean into, specifically machine hardware, be it drones, think about the humanoid robots, right? Or even things like Boston Dynamics, right? The practical use cases, other than like Department of Defense doing a bunch of stuff, right? Like we are the next industry in line that doesn't have the Department of Defense budget, right? That can actually run some of these things inside our environment. And so humanoid robots, again, right? Like I think if you watch where the puck is going, yeah, of course, it's going to make a lot of sense. But in today's day and age, I mean, those things are slow and clunky and all sorts of challenges. But being able to make an investment and have internal teams learn, and this goes across, this is broader than GXO's conversation, right? It is in companies that can lean into it so that they can help these startups evolve as well.
Totally. Just
puts the entire industry in a better position. Same thing's applicable if you look at like the AMRs, right? Look at how far they have come.
Totally.
Over the last, it started 2014-ish. So it's about 10 years that we have seen AMRs. And now it's highly accessible to everyone. And I think that's going to be the case with some of these capabilities as well. But I do have to say, like, do you have any opinions on the AI side of the universe or AI's utilization? Like, where do you see applicability of AI within, and again, AI being a very broad term, but where do you see its applicability within the workforce, within the warehouse execution side of things?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, I agree with you that you've seen like this hockey stick effect on technology with AMR specifically. Yes, since 2014, but I'd say like even in the last 5 years, like leading into the pandemic and then everything that happened with respect to availability of labor, and then the fact that flows were changing so much, it really required a more dynamic environment. And I think AMR's helped to facilitate the continued flow of goods, right? There are two things that sort of excite me, back to your question a couple minutes ago, is I love some of the inventory tech that's out there now, some of the options that are out there for improving some of, things like cycle counting and stuff, right? Stuff that's not necessarily like the most exciting stuff, but if you don't do it well, it's one of the things that can drive the most friction for customers. And I obviously our customers in terms of our clients, but customers downstream, when inventory that's flashing is available on a website is there for a consumer to acquire, and then the inventory is not there, right? So some of the technology that's out there to assist in driving the best levels, the highest levels of inventory accuracy, get me really excited, because I think that's a big part of what helps us deliver on the brand experience that a lot of these brands have. So the second piece that excites me, and it goes to the comment about the AI piece, and this is a space where we're taking some of the capabilities that we've built over time to plan to enable, a high level of service, continuous flow of goods. But when you think about AI and ML and digital twins in the background that are simulating or having the ability to simulate scenarios for what we should be replenishing, when we should be replenishing it relative to projected demand, that's something that I think gets not only myself, but our entire team super excited, right? So it's about trying to have a better understanding through, regression models to say, how do you set the team up for success that's going to be picking these orders? How do you make sure that we've got, the highest level of fill rate availability from just our reserve areas back into the pick areas, whether it's in, the automated GTP fields or it's within the manual operating environments, gravity racks and stuff like that. So that technology, I think, is still evolving, but it's something that we're experimenting with quite a bit. That I think, again, can help. Yes, efficiencies, of course, it'll help us lower cost, and that's good too, right?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, to me too. And Josh, I want to maybe flip the script here for a few minutes. As we talked about in your introduction, you started your career, or earlier in your career, you were UPS supply chain. Then you went on to work for a lot of brands and marketplaces. What are you seeing? There's a lot of volatility going on in the marketplace today. So as brands are leaning more into the outsource model and partnering with a 3PL, how do you see them kind of navigating what's going on in the market today, and what's that push and pull relationship looking like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I'd say there are a lot of different scenarios that are out there right now. I mean, especially in today's economic environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, right? A lot of clients will come to us and say, we want you to participate in this RFP. We want to understand, your differentiators. We want to understand how you would design the solution or what you would do in this instance. And again, and that's what we do. In some instances, even before you get to the RFP, based on how their businesses evolve, some of these brands are 20, 30, 40, 50, 100-year-old brands, right? So, which sounds crazy when you think about, a brand that can be that old, and they could have had a distribution environment that was, established that could be, 20, 30 years old, right? Sometimes, population shifts, preference shifts in consumer behavior, that requires a different look at the network. Then that leads into sort of network design, and then, an RFP. And sometimes it's, we're working directly with the client the entire way through.
You just mentioned that we, economic challenges as an example. Are we in a better position at this point? Because you get to see the deal flows. You get to see where people are talking versus exploring versus RFPs versus saying, let's sign an LOI versus let's go execute, right? Do you see more activity? At least from my vantage point, we are seeing more activity now this year than we did, or I've seen more activity in the first quarter of this year than there was all of last year. Is that an observation that you have as well from what is the state of the union of the general market? Is there positivity, or people are still cautiously optimistic?
I think it's a bit of both. But I also think that, post pandemic, you've had so much migrational shift across the US. I think that a lot of organizations, as they built up over time, there's sort of, one track of like going back and looking at the network and saying, man, the dust has sort of settled from everything that happened through the pandemic and then post pandemic. Is our network really, is this the right network based on, again, either what, the brands are evolving to, and there's still a lot of brands that are leaning heavier into omni-channel and things like ship from store, et cetera. But that's definitely one piece of it, right? Networks have changed, and are the networks still the right networks based on inventory strategy? You have the normal cycles around SKU proliferation, and you have, again, like are the facilities in the right locations? Are they the right size, et cetera, right? So, you have that. And I think there has been a lot of activity, to your point. There's a lot of work that we're participating in with different brands and all of our different divisions, where clients are coming to us for that expertise, right? But then there is still a lot of growth as well for a lot of these brands. And, they're trying to make sure that they have, in a similar way, aligned to their inventory strategies and their brand promise in terms of what they want the experience to be like, whether it's direct to consumer or it's the store delivery or wholesale channels, trying to make sure that the networks are aligned correctly. So there has been a lot of activity, but I think a lot of it's just come because, again, while there's uncertainty, I would also say that there's more normalization of what demand looks like relative to, say, a year ago or a year before that. It was still, coming out of the pandemic, it was still pretty dynamic. So, and I wouldn't say that that's unique for me in the consumer brand space or the retail space for the clients that we have. I'd say that's consistent in like every business, whether you're in healthcare or automotive or industrial, food and beverage, those spaces. I think it's the same.
And just one more kind of unrelated question: Do you see? So you just acquired PFS, right? We just discussed there is the post-click, pre-click experience, specifically speaking to that e-commerce experience itself, right? One of the observations in the enterprise 3PL space is very much limited to if you hire a 3PL, it is pick, pack and ship, right? I drop you an order, you do a bunch of stuff, and then you tell me that when you did it, that's it. Do you see the role evolving where even in the larger enterprise execution space, providing value-add services like the ones that PFS has provided at a more mid-level brand type of solution, right? So being involved in not just executing an RMA, but generating an RMA, right? And getting deeper into the value chain and not just shipping the products, but also tracking and validating and the end consumer experience, and then having the entire kind of loop back or the feedback loop. That's not something that exists today in the enterprise space, right? Because every enterprise wants to do it by themselves and you are the execution piece. Are you seeing that change?
No, 100%. I mean, again, we run the spectrum. For some brands, there's a pot of their network that we support, right? And that, that pot can be either channel specific or region specific, right? But then there are other clients that we have where, just focus on the United States as a for instance, where we do all of their distribution. We are their distribution capability for fulfillment, right? So, and those brands, to your point, they're expanding, with things like visibility and things like, again, a differentiated returns experience where because of what we are within that supply chain and the relationships that we build and then cultivate, we're pulled into those conversations. We're pulled into those conversations, and then in a lot of instances, we're saying, "Hey, here are some of the capabilities that we have, or here are some of the things that we're looking at." And then there's a lot of co-collaboration, co-creation that happens as a function of the problems that we understand our clients have, and then what we want to solve for them. So there is quite a bit of that. I would say, even in the reverse logistics space, there's a lot that we do in terms of processing things like refurbishment and then resell, et cetera. Where again, there are a lot of different tech players. It's not just about the physical distribution component. It's also about the technology, to your point, around visibility and then, flashing availability back on those products on those clients' sites. Everybody's in a similar position, right? You don't have unlimited resources for everything. So what we find clients doing most often is, let's leverage the experts in this thing to help us grow. Let's make sure that they have commitments around continuous improvement and efficiency, so that we don't rest on our laurels, right? And we're continuing to improve and innovate. Let's focus on the customer experience and what we're doing from a digital footprint or from a store footprint experience, and then again bring GXO into the conversation, so that we understand what they can do to add value based on the challenges that they're trying to solve.
And that is what would actually be the ideal solution, right? Because it's similar to the thesis around XPO and many other companies, and speaking specifically to that original thesis, which is the integrated supply chain, integrated solutions. When you get down to, from an e-commerce standpoint, what makes sense is an integrated solution that says end to end, help me on the e-commerce. I'm speaking very specifically to e-commerce and not going broader or omni-channel specifically to say, give me that end to end, but at an enterprise level, right? And it's a tall order, but it is what makes the most sense out in the market. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. And one of the other things that I found too, especially in my time with different organizations, being on the other side of the table, whether it's been on the design side, the decision making around which players to select, you go back to who's the best at what thing. And I think a lot of companies are continuing to prioritize how to get the best of the components versus a homogenized solution where you're going to have trade-offs in one solution over the other, just because of the nature of how an integrated solution works within a completely vertically integrated organization. So, we find clients that are making sure that they have those integration layers, for lack of a better way of putting it, to make sure that they have the best contract logistics providers, they've got the best transportation providers, they've got the best customs brokerage providers, because they're stitching together a supply chain capability that again provides a super high level of service and experience for clients. So within the spectrum of what we support, and again, there are always adjacencies, and we always have clients that are going to, in some instances, look for some simplification. We stand there ready to support some of those capabilities.
Yeah, really, really appreciate that. As we're getting close to the end here, Josh, I do want to go back to something we were talking about earlier. And if you think of a lot of the acquisitions that have taken place over the past several years, they were organizations trying to add supply chain to their portfolio, or logistics services, or 3PL services. So if we even go back to an acquisition Nanad and I were a part of many years ago with FedEx acquiring Genco, or if you think of like Shopify acquiring Deliver, and many more examples. But if you think about, there will be case studies written on why those didn't work. I mean, Shopify, we already know that they offloaded that acquisition. So are there any lessons learned? And I know this might not be fair because you're 10 months in and you're going through the first one with PFS, but are there any lessons learned from the playbook you guys embrace as to what makes that kind of integration, the connecting of the two organizations really work well? Because we've just seen so many unfortunate situations where it hasn't worked well. And you obviously with Brad, he leans heavily into M&A strategy and, obviously very strategic M&A strategy, but why does it work well? Like, that's just what I'd love to hear from you, and from your perspective, being there obviously in a short period of time. Why does it work well where in other places it just hasn't?
Yeah, I mean, so I had a front row seat to this when I was with Fritz Companies, and we were acquired by UPS Supply Chain Solutions. I was back in Boston at the time. It's, born and raised just outside of the city. And it was really interesting to see those two sort of cultures come together where, you had Fritz, which was, super, super client focused, super innovative. And, they would try to create, customized solutions for customers. And they were really focused on the client. Now, again, because of that, sometimes it created inefficiency in how they, brought that solution to bear. But, UPS is clearly, one of the best from an engineering perspective, engineered processes, right? So, putting that engineered process thing on top of like a high innovation, customer centric mindset, with, what Fritz had, like total cultural misalignment in terms of how they thought about the business and how they managed the business. And so again, I got to see a lot of the thrash that came from that. But I would say, one of the most important things, I think Brad talks about it as well, is like, you've got to have some cultural alignment, between the organizations. If fundamentally the organizations, act, react, behave differently, or have a different sort of prioritization, like meta prioritization, right? Where they could be focused almost like super insularly on cost, right? Versus focused on, client value. That's where I think you get into trouble, right? I think you get into trouble because, again, as those groups start to come together and they talk about what's important, things that people have been focused on for a long period of time may not be the thing that the broader company now focuses on as a part of integrating that piece. And so it's not that, it's about, people are bad or good. It's just about, it's a difference in how they think about the business and what they prioritize, like I said. So, with the PFS acquisition, I think that, again, the reason that it's working, and I think the reason that it's going to continue to work, and it's in hindsight, it's going to be an incredibly salient decision for the organization, is that there's huge cultural alignment that was already there because of how the organizations thought about customers. It wasn't just, hey, here's this company that operates, hundreds and hundreds of, 1,000 distribution centers globally, that's focused on just efficiency. We were focused on the client. We're focused on customized solutions at scale. PFS Web is, in some instances or in some ways is a smaller version of that, right? So, they come with a different set of capabilities, right? It's not just the pick, pack, and ship for eCom and personalization that they offer, right? There's a lot that they offer when it comes to like call center operations and fraud detection because of the adjacencies in e-commerce logistics and what their clients are looking for. So I think that cultural alignment is critical. And I think if that's not handled well on the front end, or even if it's really about acquiring infrastructure that you're then going to roll into the thing, you have to be super aware of the differences in the cultures, and you have to address it up front, and you have to be intentional and deliberate about it. So, with PFS Web, again, like I said, I've said this a few times, the mental model for how we think about serving customers is super similar. So it makes sort of how we work together, frictionless, right? Because again, there's not a debate over what's the priority. The priority is the customer, right? And our team and our customer. If you take care of your team and you take care of the customer, everything else sort of falls into place over time. And that's, same mental model for both organizations.
Yeah, that machine of acquisition, integration, cultural alignment, right? Like, I don't think most people appreciate what it actually takes to make it happen, right? And how different, even though we might all be in the same space, how different organization versus organization B happens to be culturally to be able to bring and integrate, right? Like even someone that runs a 50,000 square feet warehouse that actually gets amalgamated into a company that's like, let's say, $1 billion organization, that cultural fit, if it's not there, it's going to fall through so quickly. Totally. And where you also need that $1 billion organization that's actually making the acquisition truly understand the values of this company and why we are acquiring, right? Not only for the sake of acquisition. So the fact that there is all of this amalgamation of so many companies, I think that's pretty interesting. And just purely from a case study standpoint, something that is worth looking at. And you at the beginning kind of mentioned there are other companies that are trying this. Not many very successfully trying it. So there is a use case of success, and success is reflective in the shareholder and stakeholder information out there. So
I think to your point too, right, about if you go back and you look at, when XPO was starting to bring together, even in the contract logistics space, whether it's Jacobson, Menlo, like they had different models, mental models for how they approached serving clients too. I mean, they had really strong brand reputations in the industry. Same thing with New Breed Logistics. I think, what the team did well back then, and it's a journey, right? Like I said, if you have various cultures, right? You still have to find a way, and leaders have to prioritize melding those things together towards a common, set of goals and common set of ideals, so that the organization can sort of orient itself to how it thinks about solving problems, right? And I think that probably took a little bit of time to get done and to get done well. In some instances today, you can still sort of identify folks that work for, one of the legacy companies that was acquired and integrated, but it's pretty amazing if you think about it, right? For the most part, you can't, right? So you can see it in some spots, but for the most part, I think they did a really good job of building a culture under XPO. And then I think a lot of that culture has continued to continue to grow and develop with GXO and RXO, I'm sure, and with XPO on the LTL side broken out into the 3 separate organizations. But there's really strong culture within GXO that I think is a part of what helps to make sure folks row in the same direction. And even with PFS, I would say, if we didn't have the same cultural alignment, I know that the culture for the organization would have been one that would have said, how do we make sure that, they understand what's important, and we sort of orient everyone to that? We make sure that the goals and the incentive mechanisms, the rituals, the routines, all of that stuff aligns to drive the right behaviors.
Makes a lot of sense.
Josh, really appreciate all your insights and spending time with us today. So thank you for being here. And as a way of want to give you the opportunity to share with the audience where they could go to follow you, learn more about what you're doing, and learn more about GXO.
Sure. Well, first, again, I appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you guys. I love the podcasts. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm a pretty boring guy, right? So from a social media perspective, I stick pretty closely to LinkedIn. So that would be the place where, I share some of my, my thoughts and share some of the great work that's happening with GXO. So that's where I would say to follow me, just LinkedIn.
And GXO is GXO.com, and I guess follow GXO on a whole bunch of other different platforms.
Absolutely. GXO's on everything, right? So on LinkedIn, on X, on a number of different platforms. So, and again, there's a lot of exciting stuff that's going on right now, not just, in our core operations, but in some of the places where we're investing. So, but yeah, definitely check us out on those platforms.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Hi, I'm Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ, and I'm here with
Dan Coll, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the eCom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the eCom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs, so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the eCom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference.